One of the most seismic shifts in European history began not on the battlefield, but in the heart of a king's private life. King Henry VIII of England, once a devout Catholic and staunch defender of the Pope, made a choice that would not only redefine his kingdom but echo for centuries. It all started with a marriage, his union to Catherine of Aragon, his brother's widow. When she failed to provide a male heir, Henry became desperate. His desire for a son, for a lasting Tudor dynasty, collided with the iron grip of Catholic doctrine. The Pope refused to annul Henry's marriage, bound by religious law and political alliances. In that moment, Henry made a decision that shook the Christian world. He broke away from the authority of the Pope and created his own church, the Church of England. This act was more than just personal rebellion. It was a political revolution, wrapped in religious defiance. With a stroke of royal will, monasteries were burned, Catholic lands seized, and centuries-old traditions shattered. The English Reformation wasn't sparked by theology alone but by power, legacy, and the will of a monarch who refused to be told no. That choice would divide a continent, ignite persecution, and permanently change the course of English identity and faith. It began with one man, and it ended with a church forever altered. In early 16th century England, the Catholic Church wasn't just a religious institution, it was the backbone of everyday life. From the moment one was baptized to the final rites of death, the Church governed not just the soul, but social order, law, and loyalty. Monasteries dotted the countryside, serving as places of worship, education, healthcare, and charity. The clergy wielded immense power, and the Pope in Rome stood as the ultimate spiritual authority. To challenge him was unthinkable. Religion provided answers in a world filled with uncertainty, and obedience to the Church was woven into the fabric of English identity. But while England remained firmly Catholic, change was brewing on the European continent. In 1517, a German monk named Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to a church door in Wittenberg, criticizing the corruption and practices of the Catholic Church. His ideas gave rise to Protestantism, sparking religious revolutions that would soon reach England's shores. This time, Henry VIII ascended the throne of England as a young and promising king. Born into a deeply Catholic household, he was well-versed in theology and fiercely loyal to the Pope. His marriage to Catherine of Aragon, the widow of his older brother, was approved by a special papal dispensation. Henry saw himself not just as a monarch but as a guardian of the faith. In fact, in 1521, he wrote a treatise against Martin Luther's ideas, defending traditional Catholic doctrine with great eloquence. The Pope, delighted with Henry's intellectual and spiritual loyalty, bestowed upon him the prestigious title Fidei Defensor, Defender of the Faith. At this stage, few would have predicted the dramatic transformation that lay ahead. As the king who had defended Catholicism would soon lead its greatest betrayal in England, but Henry's world began to unravel when his queen, Catherine, failed to produce a male heir. With only a daughter, Mary, the future of the Tudor dynasty seemed fragile. Henry's anxiety about legacy turned into obsession. His sights fell upon a younger woman at court, Anne Boleyn, and he became determined to marry her. Convinced that his marriage to Catherine was cursed by God, Henry petitioned the Pope for an annulment. Yet the Pope, under immense political pressure from Emperor Charles V, Catherine's nephew, refused. Henry's desperation collided with Rome's intransigence. This impasse, which Henry referred to as his great matter, was no longer just a marital crisis, it became a political standoff with international consequences. Frustrated and determined to take matters into his own hands, Henry began to sever ties with the Vatican. He found allies in bold reformers like Thomas Cromwell and Thomas Cranmer, men who were ready to reshape England's religious landscape. Between 1533 and 1534, a series of groundbreaking laws passed through Parliament. The Act and Restraint of Appeals declared that no English citizen could appeal to the Pope. The Act of Supremacy followed, asserting that the king, not the Pope, was the supreme head of the Church of England. It was a stunning move. Overnight, centuries of papal authority were overturned, and England's national church was born. The power of Rome was replaced by royal supremacy, and spiritual obedience was redirected from the Pope to the crown. With the break from Rome formalized, Henry launched the next dramatic phase of reform, the dissolution of England's monasteries. Framed as a necessary purge of corruption and superstition, the campaign also served the king's financial interests. The immense wealth of the monasteries, land, gold, and artifacts, was seized by the crown. Religious houses were destroyed or repurposed, sacred artwork was smashed or looted, and thousands of monks and nuns were displaced. The social and cultural fabric of England was torn apart. Land ownership shifted from church to nobility, forever altering rural society. What had once been centers of education and charity became ruins, and a centuries-old system of religious Life collapsed almost overnight. Despite all this upheaval, Henry's Church of England was not Protestant in the way Luther had envisioned. Doctrinally, it remained largely Catholic. Sacraments, rituals, and clerical hierarchy were still in place. But the Pope was gone, and the king reigned over the Church. Dissent was not tolerated. Thomas More, Henry's former chancellor and a devout Catholic, was executed for refusing to acknowledge the king's supremacy. Henry's position on religion shifted as it suited his needs, but his rule was defined by control, not reform. One of his most lasting changes came in 1539, with the publication of the English Bible, a landmark step toward making scripture accessible to ordinary people and undermining Latin-speaking clergy's exclusive control over religious knowledge. As Henry's reign continued, his turbulent personal life remained inseparable from politics and religion. He married 6 times in his quest for a male heir. His third wife, Jane Seymour, finally gave him a son, Edward VI, but she died shortly after childbirth. The succession remained precarious. After Henry's death, England plunged into further instability. Edward, a Protestant reformer, ruled briefly before dying young. Mary I, Henry's Catholic daughter with Catherine of Aragon, reversed the reforms and executed Protestants in a brutal backlash. Then came Elizabeth I, Henry's daughter with Anne Boleyn, who established a permanent Protestant identity for England and shaped the future Anglican Church. Each of Henry's wives left a mark on history, through birth, betrayal, or bloodshed, but all were part of a larger legacy of dynastic anxiety and religious transformation. By the time the dust settled, England had become a fundamentally different nation. Henry VIII had started as a loyal Catholic king, but his hunger for control and legacy led him to dismantle the religious world he once defended. Whether he was a reluctant reformer or a power-hungry monarch is still debated. But the consequences of his reign are undeniable. The Anglican Church was born. Seeds of religious conflict and civil war were planted. And England's identity, political, spiritual, and cultural, was forever changed. In seeking an heir, Henry VIII gave birth to a church and changed the soul of a nation.